Hi, welcome to the Coffee Chat Show here on Buzzin Pattaya, the show where we talk about things that are happening right here, right now, as well as general news, tips, information and advice. I'm so happy that today joining me is a good friend of mine. Paul, how you doing, my man?
I'm good.
It's great to have you here. It's just, oh man, I'm so happy. I'll tell you why. You know, when you come to Pattaya, like people say, oh, there's certain characters around the city and there's certain people you need to meet, and you're on top of that list, aren't you?
Well, maybe before, I don't know.
Honestly, I mean, talk about role reversals, because normally you're the guy doing the interviewing.
I am, that's right. Yeah,
This
that's
must be
it.
unusual for you.
Yeah, this is a busman's holiday, right, or something,
Got
right?
you out of your comfort zone.
Yeah, it has a bit, yeah.
Well,
Anyway,
for those,
we'll see how we go.
Well, for those of you that don't know, Paul is a very, very well-established, what we call you, like MC, interviewer, compere. I mean, is there anything I've missed out there? Because, you know...
Yeah, I mean, that was it, you know. It was kind of, media, MC and all that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, well, basically any party where there's alcohol involved, you were there.
Well, that's another way of putting it, you know, that's like, you know, in brackets sort of thing, you know.
Well, they're good brackets.
Well, they always were, I don't know. The hangovers were good, you know, let's say it, put it that way.
Brilliant. Well, we're going to touch on a lot more about what you've done here over the years. We'll touch a lot more of that in part two. But before we get to that stage, what I'd like to do is, you know, where are you originally from?
Well, from Scotland.
Yeah.
But I grew up in Perthshire, which is sort of just above Edinburgh and Glasgow. So that's why, you know, I don't have that sort of deep Glaswegian thing, you know, that. But I was born in Aberdeen, which is, you know, there's all these different dialects to Scotland, you know. Yeah. And people always say, oh, the Scots hate the English. You know, we don't need you for a fight. We fight with each other. You know, that's, anyway, I was brought up in Perthshire.
In Perthshire. Yeah. So how does Perthshire compare to Pattaya?
Well, it's a bit different.
Begin with the same letter.
That's about it. No, I mean it's a beautiful city, very sort of conservative city, but very, very nice. And the area I grew up in was actually just north of Perth, in Burnham and Dunkeld. My family were hoteliers, and we bought this hotel from Lester Piggott. Actually, yeah. He thought that because we were near Scone Racecourse that the hotel would be great because Scone was going to be the next big race meet, and it didn't happen. Okay. So we bought the hotel. I mean, I say we. I mean, I was only 9, I think, when we moved there. But it was a great place to grow up. It was. If I showed it to you, it's like Harry Potter land. You know? It's beautiful.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you're a young lad, 9 years old, in the hotel industry, which is kind of like sort of like the entertainment-ish world.
Sure.
Did you ever picture as you were growing up you're going to be here?
Well, I wouldn't say that I pictured I was going to live here, but my father, before he was married, he'd spent some time in Hong Kong. He was a butcher at trade, and once we started to become quite successful, the hotels. We always took our family holiday to the Far East. So the Far East was never quite so far, but that was always Hong Kong. Yeah. And then it became Hong Kong, Bangkok, Singapore, and then over time, a bit of Pattaya as well.
So what age were you when you first came to Thailand?
I think, I'm not sure, maybe about 14 or 15.
14,
yeah.
Wow.
I made it home though, you know? I didn't get married or anything like that, so that was a bonus. But yeah, I mean, it was fantastic, you know.
And vastly different to what it's like now, obviously.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think at the time, like to get to Pattaya from Bangkok, I think it was about a 7 or 8 hour drive. You know, it was.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
what was it, a horse and cart?
Yeah, something like that. A rickshaw, maybe, right, would be more appropriate. But no, yeah, I mean, it was a long way back then because you know, now. You know, people sometimes joke, oh, Thailand's third world. You know, you look at the infrastructure that's here, it's absolutely phenomenal, actually.
Isn't it just? You know, I mean, and we won't go into detail, but, you know, people saying, oh, Pattaya's finished, it's over, it's done because of what we're currently going through. And yet I've seen more buildings being built, more restructuring, refurbishments than I've ever seen in my life here. So,
well, the great thing about Thailand is it always bounces back.
Yeah.
So, you know.
So a young lad in Scotland, you know, what was your career path? Where did you start off?
Well, I don't know. You know, I wasn't very academic. You know, I was playing in bands. You know, like keyboards and early synthesizers. and that kind of thing. And then, I was working in my parents' hotel. We were always on duty. I can't remember owning pajamas, I mean, literally, it's absolutely true. I remember a girlfriend of mine, I bought her some earrings for her birthday. This is when I was like 14 or something.
Yeah.
And I had this little keyboard, and she goes, I'd love one of those for my birthday. And I already bought the earrings. And I was thinking I was being romantic. And I went into John Menzies, W.H. Smith's in England. And I went in and I said to the lady, I said, I need a Casio VL tone. And she said, yeah, no problem. Look after the till. It's been murder here today. And she went away. And she thought I was like Christmas staff because I was wearing a shirt and tie because I was working in my parents' hotel. So I was like this 14-year-old kid wearing a shirt and tie, but quoting the exact model I was after. So she came back with her coat on, gave me the thing, and she left. And I had this thing, I thought, so I just walked. So I'm sorry about that.
Damn, see, I wouldn't have.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't do it now, of course. So yeah, it was kind of music, and then I got into setting up mobile discos, entertainment for the local village, and all that kind of stuff.
How did you find setting up like a mobile deal? I mean, back in the day, like 7-inch, 12 inches. I mean,
yeah, sure. Well, 12-inch was really just starting.
That was a Soy 6 dream.
Something like that, yeah. But because we owned the hotel and with the pub, we used to get all the records. When they came along and changed the records in the jukeboxes, I got all the old ones.
Oh, wow.
Right? So, I mean, I had a huge record collection, and then there was nothing going on in the village. So we went to the guy that had the local city hall, the local village hall sort of thing, and we said to him, look, there's nothing going on. We want to put on some discos. And he said, well, okay, how are you going to do that? I said, well, we've got the records and we know a bit about music, but we have to buy some amps, and I think we can build the light boxes. I actually bought the light bulb holders in Hong Kong because I was going on holiday. You could buy hundreds of them, right? So we came back, built the boxes, bought the amps, bought the turntables, and we went back to the guy and we said, right, we're all ready to go. And he says, but you boys haven't got any experience, so I booked this other guy. So thanks, lads. And I thought, oh, really? Okay. So I said, so when's your first gig? He said, it's on this coming Saturday. And a friend of mine, his father owned a hotel. So I went to his father and I said to him, is your hall available on this Saturday? He said, yeah. I said, I want to put on a disco. He said, how much are you going to pay me? And I said, it sounds like something from the Godfather movie, right? I said, I'm not going to pay you. I said, but you're going to make a fortune on the bar. Because the local village hall didn't have a bar.
Oh, right, okay.
And I was 17 at the time, I think. So, of course, everybody came to our gig because there was a bar.
Yeah.
And 2 months later, the other guy had sold his business, and that was able to fund me to buy my first sports car at the age of 17.
Sports car, what did you have?
I bought a 205 GTI, 1.6, that's all there was. I mean, I bought it, I had no idea it was like a pocket rocket. You know? So, it was.
So you were like King Dingling?
I was. I thought I was. Yeah.
Well, with that kind of car, mate, fair play to you. I mean, I'd have thought the same. So you're in the entertainment industry, and did that kind of like set you up for like the rest of your life? Because I've known you here as obviously Paul in the entertainment. I mean, did that really sort of like step you up to go into that for full time?
No, not really. No, I had no aspirations. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I know what I liked, but I didn't know what I wanted to do. So I became a driving instructor. I was the youngest driving instructor in Scotland at one point. And at one point, I had a 50% pass rate.
Did you?
Well, that was with my first client, and then the next one failed. So, anyway, so I did that, and then I worked in insurance, financial advisor and stuff like that. And then I went on to work for Richard Branson in his retail stores. Nice. And, I was working nationally at that point, working loss prevention in various other stores, and I was a store manager. And then in the evenings, I became a director of an arts festival as a voluntary thing. And I guess that's where my sort of segue into doing sort of things for the community started. And it was a classical festival that was basically, their audience were dying off because they weren't bringing in a new crowd. So
I thought you meant dying off as in like dying.
Well, they were, they were getting older, but they weren't doing anything to bring in a younger generation. So I was brought in to do that. So I hired people like Jules Holland, the Stranglers, Injury and the Blockheads, Bob Geldof, Rick Wakeman, all these sort of things. But I also ran a late night speakeasy, like a little jazz club and blues and comedy. And it was great. And, to this day, it's now the second most popular festival in Scotland. And of course, Edinburgh is number one. So
did people come to you to ask you about like bands and approve, like, what do you think of this band and what do you think of that band? Did anyone ever like ask you about certain bands that maybe you look back and think, I missed out there?
Yeah, well, see, I have a habit of missing out.
Well, you didn't miss out. You made a massive claim on this one.
I did, yeah. So you got to understand, I would finish work at Virgin. I was the oldest person there, like by 15 years. And then I would go to the festival meetings where I'm the youngest person by 20 years, right? So it was really kind of weird. And they said to me, we've been offered this band and we can get them for about, I think it was 8,000 quid. And I'd heard of the band and I said, well, I've only heard they've only had one single and it's pretty kind of depressing. I don't think we used to say clean our face, right? We can't sell out.
Yeah.
And they said, okay. And so we turned the band down, and the band was Coldplay, who I think 3 years later were voted the best live band in the world. So,
yeah, I mean, that must have been pretty brutal to look back and think, damn, we missed out there.
Well, it's funny, I just remembered that when I was doing the disco things a few years earlier, I was asked to join a band, a band from Perth, as a backing keyboard player. And I said no, because I was too busy. And then 2 weeks later, they were number 7 on Top of the Pops, and that was Fiction Factory with Feels Like Heaven. Not that I would have been on Top of the Pops, I was like the backing guy, like the Rolling Stones and Queen, they've all got these backing keyboard players that they never get any credit. So, but anyway, that was another
So if you ever got to sit down for a cold one with Chris Martin, what would you say to him?
You're getting better. Well, he scored marrying Gwyneth Paltrow, didn't he?
I know.
So yeah.
I mean, imagine that. You could have been rubbing. You could have been at their wedding.
I could have.
Yeah.
Well, who knows?
I mean, you got to think about weddings as well, don't you? Because like when you got engaged, wasn't that a bit of a shock to the system? That's his brother. See, I've been talking to your brother David, and he's nailed you here. Sorry.
All right, David. Thank you very much. I mean, when you're young, and we're bouncing back and forward on the timeline here, but when you're young, sometimes you get a bit of pressure from your better half, right? And you're like, okay, well, we'll get engaged, right? Just to kind of appease her. And then she said, when's the wedding? And I said, who's getting married? She goes, us. I said, what? Are you mad? So, sadly, as you can
imagine.
Yes.
An experience.
Yeah.
So let's talk about, obviously you're a young lad, you're doing really well, you're starting to find your feet in what you want to do, etc. I mean, when was the first time you came back to Pattaya on your own?
I was, I don't know, maybe about 20 years ago. It's hard to say, really. But what happened was, when I was a director of the Arts Festival, we took the local press out to get them drunk, so they'd write lots of nice things for us. Yeah. And the lady who ran a radio station, she said to me, you've got a really nice voice, which I thought was just a nice way of saying you're ugly, And anyway, so I got this gig doing a radio show. I love movies, so I did a show about movies, and then I did the Saturday afternoon show, and then I was doing every afternoon. And anyway, I was going through a divorce at the time, so that all finished, and I went to Europe for 4 or 5 months, sort of following my nose. And I came to Thailand for 4 weeks by myself. First time I'd had a prolonged holiday, not just the 2 week something fest. Anyway, And I started to see a different side to the
Really?
not the dark side.
What kind of side was that then, Paul?
No, I mean, it's different when you're not just the 2-week holiday maker.
Yeah.
You start to think about other things, and you start to think, well, wait a minute, could I live here? And what actually happened was, I went back to Scotland for Christmas and New Year, and the tsunami hit Thailand.
Oh, okay.
So I woke up, I heard the news, and I was doing a live broadcast that morning. And I was just so emotional. And I felt this, it sounds nonsense, but I felt this draw. And that was it. 14 days later, I moved here, and that was it. So nearly 17 years I've been here.
Wow.
Yeah.
So when you're on the radio before you came out here, I mean, I guess like people would request a lot of songs for you.
Yes, yeah, people would request songs.
So like, was it
This sounds like a setup by my brother again, yeah.
I mean, is there any like songs that, particularly when you were playing on the air, you think there's a lot of people asking for, I don't know, say like Cotton Eye Joe or something like that?
Cotton Eye Joe was my favourite song to hate, because I just, and I think people start to get to know that, and of course I had all these friends who were listening, so they would text and email, and and then the producers going, are you going to play that bloody song or not? I'm like, it's rubbish. And who is Cotton Eye Joe? Have they found him yet? 20 years later they still haven't found him. So that would drive me up.
So even your birds are agreeing. As soon as we mentioned Cotton Eye Joe, they started squawking.
If you start singing, they know it. Yeah.
Oh, do they? Yeah. You've heard me singing. All right, we understand Cotton Eye Joe. We won't put it on. I promise you. So you triggered the bird, didn't you? When he mentions that word, squawk.
Yeah.
So you came over here to live. I mean, what year was that when you came here?
Well, so it was just after the tsunami. So I think it was January. What was the tsunami? 2005.
Yeah,
2004 maybe.
Yeah.
So I came out in 2005, in January 14th or something.
And like when you made that decision, what did your family think? To say that's it, I'm done and dusted.
I don't think I said I was done and dusted, but I came out. I packed up all my stuff, put it into storage in Scotland, and I wanted to turn the page. And I always see life as chapters, and there's a time in your life where you do a certain thing, and it can be great, and you might be brilliant at it, but to keep the inertia, to keep the momentum going, you've got to change, you've got to move on. I wouldn't like the idea of having the same career for 30 or 40 years. The pension would be very nice,
yeah,
of course,
yeah, wouldn't it too?
But I think you've got to be open to chance and to taking a chance, and like this radio thing I was doing, it was voluntary at first, and then it was paid, but that gave me the confidence that when I came here, I thought, oh, I'll get a job working in radio because it must be easy, right?
Yeah, cool, yeah.
But I was just so lucky. I just bumped into a guy in the pub, and I told him what I did, and he said, I'm working for a TV station. They're looking for someone to do voiceovers. So that was it. I started reading the news on Pattaya TV. Any
regrets?
No regrets, none at all. It took me 3 months to learn how to say the mayor's name. The mayor at the time was Niran Watanasasaton.
That's a name, isn't it?
It is, but you used to have to read this, and it was all in one take, right? We didn't have digital recording back then, and I got into a right flummox. I was like, take 35, take 36. Paul, when are we going to air? But yeah, no regrets, and I think it's people sometimes say to me, I'm not particularly successful in terms of like money, but I think, what is happiness? What is happiness? For me, it's not having a fat bank account, because I've never had one. But I think happiness is just being at peace with yourself and knowing that you're all right.
So talking about happiness, I want you to go back in time a few years before we're in the situation we're in right now. Everything's at its full flow.
Yeah.
You got a choice: Soy 6 or Walking Street. Which one?
All right. Is that one of your standard questions
No,
that
it isn't
you
actually.
ask?
I just thought I'd throw it at you.
All right. Okay.
I've not actually asked that to anybody, but I thought let's throw that one at you.
Well, okay, it's a good question, and I think it depends on the company. As I guess is the answer. I'm not talking about my mother. I mean,
your mum's here, isn't she?
Yeah, my mum lives here. Yeah. She's and we're so lucky.
We're getting down to 6.
Yeah, that's it. I remember my mates' wives. Because the guys would say, "I we're going down soy half a dozen."
Yeah.
And of course the wives would get kind of savvy to that, right? Because they would know it meant soy 6. So we developed another code. We said, "Oh, we're having a meeting between 5 and 7." And then my mate in front of his wife would go, "Oh, great, soy 6 it is then." No, anyway, it was great times, legendary stuff,
So you haven't answered my question. 6 or Walking Street?
Probably soy 6. Don't get me wrong, I've done Walking Street to death, but probably the 6. Just because the sheer characters you can find. I remember one time there was a guy driving down there, selling like watermelons, and he's got the little, like the speaker thing, microphone and the speaker. And my friend went up to him, gave him 100 baht, grabbed the thing. So my friend's outside the car, and he starts serenading the street. He starts singing, "You can't bring me flowers," and everywhere's just stopped. Like, what is this guy doing? And it's just moments like that sort of stick in your mind. So
you got a lot of moments here, because obviously I've known you for 10 years, and I've known you in the industry that you've so well known for, the entertainment industry here, in terms of like the interviews. That we're going to touch on that a lot more in part 2, because I know you've got some great stories for that.
Okay.
And we'll talk about Maxine interview. That how do we describe that? It was like you're on the spur of the moment and bladdered, really, weren't you?
Well, yeah, So it was.
Don't spill the beans. We'll do that in part 2. But I'll tell you, this guy, right? You've been stood next to. What were they? Were they like international supermodels?
They were.
When do I get my turn?
You're not getting any of that action.
No, it's not happening, mate.
It's all about timing.
Well, my time is clearly wrong. But before we finish on part 1, I just want to ask you one question. You've got a young lad, he's back home, he's never been to Pattaya before, everything's back to normal now, we're back home.
Okay.
What would be your nugget of advice? What would you say to him now? Listen, sit yourself down, sunshine, I need to tell you this one piece of advice, and you've got to take it on board and go and do it. What would you say to him?
Oh, well, I would give him the advice that I was given.
Okay.
Which was from a guy who'd been here 23 years. Okay. And this is when I first arrived. And he said to me, the longer I live here, the less I understand.
Oh, okay.
And that doesn't mean that Pattaya or Thailand's a bad place, but you can't adopt the same principles of what's going to happen as you would in the West. You just never know what's going to happen here, but embrace it rather than push it away.
Day by day.
Yeah, well, I say embrace it, one on one side, one on the other.
And you've been good at that as well. I know, I've seen you.
part of the job.
Absolutely. My friend, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much indeed. Guys,
right, cheers.
Paul Strachan here, he really is one of Pattaya's really cool characters. I've known him a long time, he's brilliant. Part 2, we're going to find out about this yacht that you was on interviewing some rather very pretty young ladies, which clearly I got left out on the invitation, which is not good. And some other things that you've been up to, etc. And also about a more serious side of your nature as well. But we're going to do that in part 2. Guys, that's it from us today here on the Coffee Chat Show. Thank you very much for watching. As always, guys, remember, hit the subscribe button and also the bell icon if you'd like to be notified when we bring out a new video. Check out our members area. More and more members are joining each and every week. There's lots going on in it. And join our Discord group. Over 3,000 people now, just like you, with a love for this fantastic city that we're currently sat in, all talking about lots of different things, sharing photos, videos, etc, etc. Check it out, guys. There's a link down below. All right, that's it from me and Paul. Thank you very much for watching, and please, as always, wherever you are in the world, stay safe.
Bye.